You've probably heard the news that Third Strike is returning to EVO, and even if you haven't touched the title yourself, it's hard not to be excited. It's a game that to this day is thriving competitively all over the world, with a legacy that spans 25 years and has influence far beyond our small community. Fortunately for us, it's not only its impact on popular culture that makes it famous, it's also just an amazing game to play, and it features my favourite matchup of all time. Not just any matchup though, a mirror matchup, and more specifically, Ken versus Ken. If you ever want to provoke a reaction from an opponent before a single round has even been played, you pick their character. There's a reason for it too. Not only do you have to suffer the ego death of getting hit by your own mix-ups that you've loudly been downplaying on Twitter for months, but mirror matches, especially in older games, are notoriously wonky. When you have more extreme archetypes fighting each other, they don't often have the tools to defeat their own game plan. Honda vs Honda in early editions of Street Fighter 4 was miserable. He struggled to open himself up due to all his incredibly strong defensive options, so once a life lead was established, he could just hold down back and react, leaving the opponent that had to approach and lose charge at serious disadvantage, resulting in some brutal stalemates. This is also in big part due to his inability to score a knockdown that leads to Oki. Normally a character could get him on the floor and mess up his charge, making for easier pressure, but outside of some very specific and often expensive routes, this wasn't really possible in the mirror. Then you had matchups like Boxer vs Boxer in Super Turbo. All his most obnoxious mix-ups work against himself, and his super does 70%, is invulnerable and safe on block, leading to some brutal swings in momentum once a knockdown is scored. If we're talking about mirrors, we also have to mention characters that are overly quick, characters like Chip. In the mirror, the game becomes incredibly preemptive for everyone involved, making his game plan muddy and the matchup feel at times out of control. He's a character that is defined by his low health and killing people with a million cuts. Typically you're able to leverage these traits to have better control over the risk reward, but against himself, this is just less of a factor. Not to say these sorts of mirror matches can't be fun, they of course can, and they remain a test of skill because you can be amazing at them, but are they good? Maybe, but I definitely struggle to argue they're great. Mirror matches tend to have a wider appeal when the characters involved have a big range of applicable playstyles. The lack of extremes mean a lot of an individual's personality shines through because the win condition is far more vague. It's why the classic Shoto mirror is so revered. You know who's playing without even seeing the name. It makes for not only an incredible showcase of mechanical prowess in a matchup where your tools are equal, but it also makes for a battle of who that player is as a person. Ken vs Ken, however, feels a little bit different. I think it's a cut above the rest, and I think I have some logic behind that. Ken is undeniably a strong character in Third Strike, but what makes him strong is his balance. He lacks the brute force of a Yun. He can't just impose mix-ups and pressure at any point when he's got Genai Gen on deck, but he does have better HP. He hasn't got the health-ripping power of Chun-Li and her SA3, which adds a grotesque amount of consequence to misplay in neutral, but unlike her, he's got a meterless reversal. You won't find him with Makoto's touch of death potential, but his walk speed and dash speed combined with his fantastic buttons make his neutral brutal to deal with. Ken has no weakness, but everything about him is above average. What makes him so powerful is the fact he's flexible. He can adjust his game plan to counter any opponent. He has solid pressure with his strike throw game, which boasts hit confirms into super that can either have to be parried with down or forward depending on which string you go for. He has fantastic meterless damage from deep hits with his Kara Shoryuken, great pokes with crouch medium kick, stand hard kick, sweep, and his confirmable stand or crouching medium punch. He's even got some good mix-ups on top of it all. What's sick is the mirror showcases all of these tools because the lack of ridiculous strength means you don't have to beg a win condition. You can lead with what makes you strong as a player. You're able to slow the matchup down to an absolute cruel, playing just outside of his most dangerous ranges, tapping away all his approaches with those longer, slower buttons. using things like crouch medium punch whiffs to punish any risky movement from him, all while building meter for when you have finally given up enough real estate on stage and you want to make that quick escape. Of course, you can get aggressive too. His dash is quick, and that strong neutral game can create a ton of hesitation within the opponent that you can capitalize on. His jumps too, they're good on their own, great with his DP, and incredible with his super, specifically his super Art 3. I've been omitting it up until now, but this super is amazing. It turns the matchup on its head, and it's beautiful. This super has 2 frames of startup, and it punishes everything. Those buttons I mentioned being strong in neutral, crouch medium kick, stand hard kick, and sweep, if you super on block, you're punishing every single one of them. And of course, on top of all of that, with its absurdly long range, it becomes a deadly whiff punish. They are not easy punishes. I mean, the whiffs are, but those block punishes, specifically the crouch medium kick on block, has to be done with a reversal super. Otherwise, at max range, it just won't punish. It's not difficult per se, but it is missable. And this is good because it means Ken keeps his neutral tools. He just has to be smart with them. The thing is, even if you could punish 100% of the time, would you even want to? This super acts as a terrifying deterrent for Ken's best long-range normals, making getting in that touch easier and adding a ton of consequence to this game's most simple interactions. What you've got here is a super that is your best whiff punish, your best conversion tool, and your best block punish. Not only is he a jack of all trades character, but he has a super which is functionally the same. What's so perfect is the fact there is no right way to spend it. Sure, you could cash it in on a nice knockdown, but now you can't block punish and your opponent's mid-range is stronger than yours. You could cash it in on a whiff, but now you're not going to get good damage from long-range high jumpings. The super is his greatest strength, and in the mirror, it's his greatest weakness. Maybe as a response you play slightly more aggressive, prioritizing a close range where your medium punches are more potent, completely avoiding the threat of these block punishes. But if you oversimplify your approach, it will just get countered. This matchup demands you bounce around playstyles constantly to not let your opponent get comfortable. And on top of that, you'll need to react to the meta game because it changes absolutely everything. It isn't simply the fact that this mirror has so many applicable playstyles that made me love it. A lot of good mirror matches do. I love it because it is a matchup which is perpetually in motion, positioning a meter a key in a way that feels almost overbearing for a mirror, as it forces you to reevaluate your own tools constantly. You have to be on your toes, responding to every single inch of the match's evolution. And pair this with a parry system that allows for massive reads and requires the variation of timing to counter, what you end up with is my favourite mirror match. It is dense, it is fast, it is expressive, it is everything. There is one tiny issue with this mirror vote. It's not entirely balanced. A mirror match should be 5-5. That is pretty much the defining feature of a mirror, but not Ken versus Ken. I'm going to link to a video by Nikakeo who does a great job at explaining the differences between the ports, but simply put, Player 1 Ken has access to cross-ups, most notably after Super, that Player 2 Ken doesn't. Does this magically turn the matchup into 6-4 for Player 1? No, but it is a difference important enough to note. So if you are planning to play him at EVO, you better start team moding rock, paper, scissors.